Hello everyone, welcome to session 9 of IASbaba's Rapid Revision series or RaRe series for UPSC Prelims Examination 2021. I am Preetham Reddy and in this session I will be dealing 10 important topics from economics and current affairs. So which are important for UPSC Prelims Examination 2021. So we know that today we are in day 11 schedule of Rapid Revision series or RaRe series. So day 11 topics, so they include poverty, inequality, growth and development. So today's session majorly focuses on poverty and inequality and also the current affair articles based on these topics. So today we will be dealing with poverty basics, post-independence poverty estimation and poverty, and then we will try to understand poverty trend, that is current poverty trend, and global multidimensional poverty index coordination committee, and then sustainable development goal India index, which was recently released by Niti Aayog, and then socio-economic caste census survey and global gender gap report and global wage report and SOFI, that is state of food security and nutrition in the world. So all these report and all these indexes were recently released and they were in news. They are important because so they provide some depth analysis on poverty, on inequality, right, or hunger, etc. So that's the reason all these topics are important. So first we'll try to understand some basics, that is poverty. So we all know the definition of poverty. So poverty is nothing but it is a condition in which an individual or household, they lack the money or financial resources in order to afford some basic minimum standard of living, right? So people who cannot afford the basic minimum standard of living, so they are called poverty. So we know the poverty definition, but there are some important facts which one should revise and remember. So we will be dealing with those important facts. So first important fact is poverty line, how it is estimated in India. So you have to know in India poverty line, so it is computed based on a large sample survey of household expenditure. So it is based on the sample survey of household expenditure and which estimates the purchasing power to buy food or any other non-food expenses. So you have to remember this. And second important point is NSSO, that is National Sample Survey Office. So this NSSO, it uses consumption as the underlying factor in supplying data for defining the poverty line. So how do we define poverty line? It is majorly on the basis of consumption. So this is the second important fact what we have to remember. And currently, that is poverty line calculation, it is done based on the money spent to consume 2100 and 2400 calories per capita in urban and rural India respectively. So it is 2100. So what is the money spent to consume 2100 calories and 2400 calories per capita in urban and rural India respectively. So this is the fact which you have to remember and most of you people might be knowing. So next important fact is what is the criteria which is given by World Bank. So World Bank's international poverty line, it says person who are living daily on US $1.90. So World Bank says a person who spends less than this particular US dollar 1.90 a day, he or she will be considered below IPL line, that is below international poverty line, or he or she is classified as poor person. Okay, so this is the criteria which is set by World Bank. And you can also remember ADB, that is Asian Development Bank. So it has also given its criteria and it says that currently any person who is spending below 1.51 US dollar per person per day, so whoever is spending less than 1.51 US dollar, so they are considered as poor. Okay, so the ADB, it has reduced the benchmark or it has reduced the criteria. So the major crux here what you have to remember is poverty line estimation in India, it is based on the consumption expenditure and not on the income levels. So this should raise the question why we are not using income levels in order to estimate the poverty line, right? So one, it is because of difficulties in assessing incomes of self-employed people, and second, it is also difficult to assess the salary of daily wage laborers, and there will be large fluctuations in income due to seasonal factors or additional side incomes as well, or even there is difficulty in order to collect such a large data. So data collection will be difficult, especially in rural and informal economy of India. That's the reason poverty line estimation, it is based on consumption expenditure rather than income levels. So this is what you have to remember. And next you should know the role of NSSO, that is National Sample Survey Office. So it regularly conducts survey on household consumer expenditure. So in which households are asked about their consumption of last 30 days, and this is taken as the representative of general consumption. Okay, so just remember these two important facts. Next you have to know the data collection method for NSSO expenditure survey. So let's try to know the data collection method. So there are two types of data collection method. First one is uniform resource period, and second one is mixed reference period. So here we have to know till 1993 to 1994, the poverty line, it was based on this URP data, that is uniform resource period. So under this particular method, it involved asking people about their consumption expenditure across a 30-day recall period. So information was based on the recall of consumption expenditure in the previous 30 days. So now we have adopted, especially after 1999 to 2000, so we have adopted, that is NHO has switched to the MRP method, that is mixed reference period. So under this mixed reference method, what we are doing, it measures consumption of 5 low frequency items, which you have to remember: clothing, footwear, durables, education, and institutional health expenditure. So these five low frequency items, so we will be measuring the consumption on these 5 low frequency items over the previous year and all other items over the previous 30 days. So students should remember that currently this NSSO, it has switched to this particular MRP method. So next we will try to understand how NSSO, so what kind of approach or method it uses to measure unemployment in India. So there are 3 different approaches. First one is usual status approach, second is weekly status approach, and third one is daily status approach. So the first one, that is usual status approach. So here it estimates only those persons as unemployed who had no gainful work for a major time, that is 365 days preceding the date of survey. So this is what you have to remember. So usual status approach, it deals with a long term, that is 365 days, whereas weekly status approach, so this approach records only those persons as unemployed who did not have gainful work even for an hour on any day of the week preceding the date of survey. And finally daily status approach. So here unemployment status of a person, it is measured for each day in a reference week. So a person having no gainful work even for 1 hour in a day is described as unemployed for that day. So these two approaches are tricky, that is weekly status approach and day status approach. You have to remember, in weekly status approach, only those persons are classified as unemployed who did not have gainful work even for an hour on any day of the week. So this is what is important. In daily status, a person having no gainful work even for 1 hour in a day is described as unemployed for that day. So these are the 3 different approaches which is used by NSSO in order to measure unemployment. So next important topic, that is post-independence poverty estimation. So we know that there were various expert groups who were constituted by the erstwhile planning commission. So that time planning commission, it had set up or constituted various expert groups in order to estimate the number of people living in poverty in India. So we will see who are those. So first one, working group, which was set up in 1962, and second is there was study by V.M. Dandekar and N. Rath. So they also studied in order to provide some estimation of the number of people living in poverty in India. And then third one is Dr. Y.K. Alag Expert Committee. So there was this Y.K. Alag task force on projections of minimum needs and effective consumption demand. And then we had Lakdawala expert group, and next we have Suresh Tendulkar expert group and Rangarajan Committee, which was recently constituted in 2014. So these are some post-independence poverty estimation related various expert groups. So you have to remember. So in UPSC they might frame a question chronological order, or they might ask which committees are associated with the poverty estimation. So these are the committees which you have to remember, and majorly we have to read and revise, especially Tendulkar expert group and Rangarajan Committee. So these two are important. So next we will try to understand the Tendulkar expert group. So first important point, Suresh Tendulkar expert group, it was constituted in 2005 and it submitted its report in 2009. And one important point to note here is this particular expert group, it did not construct a poverty line, rather it just adopted the officially measured urban poverty which was based on the Lakdawala methodology. Okay, that's why it is important to know about Lakdawala expert group also. So what did Lakdawala expert group suggest or recommend? So this Lakdawala expert group, it redefined the poverty line and it retained the separate rural and urban poverty lines recommended by the Alag committee at the national level based on minimum nutritional requirements. So this is what is important, because Tendulkar expert group, it just took the concept from this Lakdawala expert group which was talking about the minimum nutritional requirement. So let's try to understand what did the Tendulkar expert group recommend. So first it recommended that there is a need to shift away from poverty lines from calorie norms towards targeted nutritional outcomes. And instead of two separate poverty line baskets for rural and urban poverty lines, so this Tendulkar committee, it recommended a uniform all India urban poverty line basket across rural and also urban India. So this Tendulkar committee said we don't want two separate poverty line baskets, rather we will keep a uniform all India poverty line basket which will run same for the urban as well as rural. So next, this particular committee, it incorporated private expenditure on health and education while estimating poverty. So this is one more important point what you have to know. And next you have to know, even the Tendulkar expert group, it recommended using mixed reference period based estimates rather than uniform resource or uniform reference period. So even the Tendulkar expert group, it recommended using MRP, that is mixed reference period. And next, this is very important point. So Tendulkar committee or Tendulkar expert group, it recommended that instead of monthly household consumption, so consumption expenditure was broken up into per person per day consumption, so resulting in the figure of rupees 32 and rupees 26 a day for urban and rural areas. And finally, the national poverty line for 2011 to 12, it was estimated at rupees 816 per capita per month for rural areas and rupees 1000 per capita per month for urban areas. So based on the methodology and based on the recommendations which were given by Suresh Tendulkar, so the national poverty line for 2011-12, it was estimated at 816 per capita per month for rural areas and 1000 rupees per capita per month for urban areas. And next you have to know, India has not counted its poor population since 2011. So currently the number of poor in the country, it is pegged at around 21.9% or 22% of the population, and it is according to the 2011 estimate. But recently United Nations, so it has estimated the number of the poor in the country, and it is telling that so India might have around 28% of the population. So this particular calculation, whatever the UN had provided, so it did not include the recent or the new poor due to the pandemic. Okay, so if we add those people also into the estimation, then maybe it might rise more than 30% of the population. So currently as of 2019 as of 2019 study by United Nations, so it has estimated in India around 28 to 29% of the Indian population, they are under poor category or they can be classified as poor. So next we will try to understand Rangarajan Committee. So first you have to know, it was set up in 2012 and it submitted report in June 2014. And this Rangarajan Committee, it recommended separate consumption baskets for rural and urban areas. So we know that in Tendulkar Committee, he said that instead of two separate poverty line baskets, so we should have one uniform poverty basket, right? Poverty line basket. But here Rangarajan Committee, he is recommending for separate consumption basket for rural and urban areas, which include food items that ensure recommended calorie and that ensures recommended protein and fat intake, and also non-food items like clothing, education, health, housing and transport. Okay, so this is more inclusive and it is more broadened. So next, this committee, that is Rangarajan Committee, it raised the daily per capita expenditure to rupees 47 for urban and rupees 32 for rural, from 32 and 26 rupees respectively. So before we saw here, right? So according to the Tendulkar Expert Committee, so during 2011 estimate, rupees 32 rupees for the urban, 26 for the rural areas. But right now, this was raised to rupees 47 for the urban and rupees 32 for the rural. Okay. And also the monthly per capita consumption expenditure was also raised. So during 2011-12, 816 rupees per capita per month for rural and 1000 rupees it was for the urban. However, now it is 972 rupees for the rural area and 1407 in urban area. So monthly per capita consumption expenditure, it stands at 972 rupees in rural area and 1407 rupees in urban area. So this is what was recommended by the Rangarajan Committee. However, you have to note that the government did not take a call on the report of the Rangarajan Committee. And next you have to note the Rangarajan Committee estimation, it is based on an independent large survey of households by Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. So next, let's try to understand the poverty trend and pandemic struck India. So we'll see the current pandemic trend. So there is a small graph which was provided in the current affairs news article. So as you can see here, the graph is talking about pre-pandemic projection and post-pandemic estimate. So what was the pre-pandemic condition and post-pandemic estimate? So as you can see, middle income or the percentage of middle income people, it is shrinking. So first important point what you have to know, middle income class, they are shrinking, and second is number of poor people, it is increasing. So as you can see here, so from 5.9 it is rising to 13.4. So you have to know, because of pandemic and lockdown conditions, the middle class in India, so the percentage of middle class in India, it has been shrunk by 3 crore in 2020. And the number of people who are poor in India, so it is increasing, and it has increased by 7.5 crore because of the COVID-19 recession. So this is what you can see in the figure. So the next important estimate what we can see in the figure is the low income people. So you have to understand the vast majority of India's population, they fall into the low income tier or low income category. So these are the people who are earning about rupees 150 to 700 rupees per day. So you have to know who are these low income people. They are the people who are earning 150 rupees to 700 per day. And who are the middle income people? So they are the people who are earning around 700 to 1500 rupees. And those who come under the rich category, so they have more than 1500 rupees income per day. So this classification you have to know. So as you can see in the figure, the vast majority of India's population, they fall into the low income tier, who are earning just 150 to 700 rupees per day. So this group also, you can see there is a shrink, right? So it has also shrunk. So next we will see rich population. So even rich population, you can see there is some decrease both in high income and also upper middle class people. So from all these what we can infer, obviously the poverty is increasing, the poverty is rising, and even there is a record spike in the MG Narega participants. So it acts as the proof that the poor were struggling to find work. So MG Narega, it is no more able to absorb demands for employment. So such is the condition right now in India. So these are some estimates which are provided by Pew Research Center using the World Bank data. So you have to remember this. And one more important fact what we have to know is India's uninterrupted progress in poverty reduction since 1970s. It has been stalled now. So that is with this pandemic or with this COVID-19 situation, India's uninterrupted progress in poverty reduction since the 1970s. So it has been stalled now. So last time India reported an increase in poverty, it was in the first quarter century after independence. So it was during 1951 to 1974. So it was during 1951 to 1974. However, after 1970s, so India's poverty has been gradually, it has been reducing. But right now what has happened, it is the opposite. So the poverty is rising. And next important topic, global multidimensional poverty index. So even this particular global multidimensional poverty index, I think in 2019, this report, so it said that India is one of the country which has highest rate of poverty reduction, and it had complimented India, telling that India might have lifted around 271 million citizens out of poverty between 2006 and 2016. However, contrast to this particular situation, right now in 2020, what is happening? There is highest global poverty increase happening in India. That's why this particular global multidimensional poverty index and whatever the findings are there, it is very important for exam this year. So first we'll try to understand global multidimensional poverty index. It is released by Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. But second important point what you have to know is this particular index, it is part of UN. So it is part of UNDP's Human Development Report, and it is released annually. So this is what you have to remember. And the major idea behind this index is to measure acute multidimensional poverty across developing countries. So the major area is to study multidimensional poverty across the developing countries. So we have to know global multidimensional poverty index. It is developed by this Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative with the help of UNDP, that is UN Development Program, and it is part of UN Development Program's Human Development Report, and which is released annually. So this is the fact you have to remember. And finally you have to know what are the different dimensions and indicators under this global multidimensional poverty index. So questions have been framed already on the lines of like which of the following are the indicators of XYZ index or XYZ report. Okay, so that's the reason we have to know this global MPI. It has 3 dimensions and 10 indicators. So as you can see in the figure, so what are the 3 dimensions? It is health, education and living standards. So next you have to know the weight structure, that is which particular dimension gets what weightage and which particular indicators get what is the weightage. So you can see first 1 by 3, 1 by 3, 1 by 3 weightage is given to health, education and living standards. And when it comes to health dimension, 1 by 6, 1 by 6 weightage is given to child mortality and nutrition, and 1 by 6 and 1 by 6 weightage is given to years of schooling and school attendance. So this is important. And finally 1 by 18 of weightage is given to the living standards. So indicators under the dimension living standard, that is cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, housing, electricity and assets. So these are the things which one should remember and revise. So let's see next what are the key findings. So let's see what are the key findings under global multidimensional poverty index, which was released recently in 2020. So the theme of MPI 2020 was charting pathways out of multidimensional poverty and achieving the SDG goal, that is Sustainable Development Goal. And second, you have to note India ranked 62 out of 107 countries. So MPI, that is Multidimensional Poverty Index, it has ranked India 62nd out of 107 countries. So already I said it focuses majorly on developing countries. So out of 107 developing countries, India is ranked 62nd. And you have to note this multidimensional poverty index, it collects data using National Family Health Survey. And Global MPI 2020 Index, it also highlights that out of 5.9 billion people in 107 developing countries, around 22% of the people, they are multidimensionally poor. That is more than 1.3 billion people. So they are multidimensionally poor. This is the next important fact. And then from the finding we come to know that children show higher rates of multidimensional poverty. So these are some important facts. And the regions with high multidimensional poverty, they are, first one is sub-Saharan Africa. So usually in sub-Saharan Africa around 558 million, they are multidimensional poverty. And South Asia is second, 530 million are under poverty. And middle income countries, so they are home to 2/3 of the multidimensional poverty index poor. So here you have to know from both this African continent and South Asia, so around 84.3% of multidimensionally poor people, they live in these two areas, that is sub-Saharan Africa as well as South Asia. So these are some of the important findings from this global MPI index 2020. And next you have to know India ranks poor compared to its neighbors. So let's see what is the MPI ranks of India's neighbors in 2020. So Sri Lanka is doing good with 25. So we know that India ranking is 62. So how is Nepal doing? It is not doing good, 65. Bangladesh is doing good, 58. China 30. Myanmar 69. Pakistan 73. So Bangladesh and Sri Lanka is doing better than India. So next we will try to understand Multidimensional Poverty Index Coordination Committee. So this particular committee was in news because Niti Aayog, it constituted this Multidimensional Poverty Index Coordination Committee. So Niti Aayog, it is the nodal agency for the global MPI, that is Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. So you have to know Niti Aayog, it has been assigned the responsibility of leveraging the monitoring mechanism for this global MPI, that is Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. And currently MPICC, that is Multidimensional Poverty Index Coordination Committee, it is chaired by Sanyukta Samadar. And Global MPI, it is part of Government of India's decision to monitor the performance of the country in 29 select global indices. So these are the facts one should revise and remember. And finally in India, Multidimensional Poverty Index Coordination Committee, it is the nodal agency for Multidimensional Poverty Index. So next, Sustainable Development Goal India Index 2020-2021. So this Sdg India Index, it was recently released, that's why it was in news. So it is a index which is launched by Niti Aayog. So you have to know even Multidimensional Poverty Index Coordination Committee, it is constituted by MPICC. And next, this Sdg India Index, it is also launched by Niti Aayog. So this Sdg India Index, it was launched first time in 2018. And Niti Aayog, it has constructed this Sdg Index spanning 13 out of 17 SDGs. So it has left out goal number 12, 13, 14 and 17. So we'll try to understand what are those goals. That is 12, responsible consumption and production, 13, climate change, 14, life below water, and 17, that is partnership for the goals. So apart from these 4 areas or 4 SDGs, so the 13 SDGs, they are part of what? Sdg India Index. So this is one more important fact which you have to know, that the Sdg India Index, it doesn't take care of all the 17 SDG goals, but it just considers 13 out of the 17. A next important fact is Sdg India Index, it is developed in collaboration with Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Global Green Growth Institute and United Nations in India. So this index, Sdg Index, it tracks the progress on a set of 62 national indicators. So next you have to know Sdg India Index, its scores range between 0 to 100. That is, higher the score of a state or UT, the greater the distance to target achieved. So let's see what are the key findings by this Sdg India Index 2020-2021. So the country's overall SDG score, it has improved by 6 points, that is from 60 in 2019 to 66 in 2021. So next you have to know India improved its poverty eradication, zero hunger and reduced inequalities course also. So as I was telling you, right, that from 1970s, so India has gradually, it has been able to reduce the poverty. It has been able to reduce the hunger and inequality levels also. But now things are changed. Anyway, the Sustainable Development Goal, it is focusing on 2020 to 2021. So according to that particular estimation, India has shown improvements according to poverty eradication, zero hunger and also reduced inequalities. And next you have to know eradicating poverty in all forms and dimensions. It is the primary SDG goal, that is Sustainable Development Goal. Since we are dealing with poverty chapter, so this particular point is important. Next we will see what are the positions of states and UTs according to this SDG India Index, how it is performing. So first is Kerala. So Kerala score is 75, Himachal Pradesh, Tamil Nadu 74, Andhra Pradesh, Goa, Karnataka, Uttarakhand 72. So first is Kerala, second is Himachal Pradesh, third is Tamil Nadu, then we have Andhra Pradesh, Goa, Karnataka, Uttarakhand, Sikkim and Maharashtra. And what are the bottom 5 positions? So bottom 5, it is Bihar is 52, Jharkhand is 56 and then Assam 57. So the least performing states are Assam, Jharkhand and Bihar, and the best performing states are Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Goa, etc. And also in RaRe notes, I have provided goal wise top states and UTs. So you can go through that one and you can revise that also. And next topic, so this is extra topics regarding Sustainable Development Goals. So it was set up in 2015 by United Nations General Assembly, and the target to achieve the goals is by 2030. And we have around 17 goals. So how to remember all the 17 goals? So trick is I can help. So I can help. So you can see here I for, so first one is I. So in I we have two things. One is industry, innovation and infrastructure, and second is inequality. So under CAN we have 5 different divisions. So clean water and sanitation, clean energy, climate change, cities and communities, consumption and production. And under H, hunger and health. So under E we have education, equality, economic growth, decent work. And under L, life below water and life on land. And P for poverty, peace and justice, and partnership for the goals. So this is the way we can club, so we can remember what are the goals, so you can revise it easily. So next important topic, that is socio-economic caste census survey. So why we have to read and revise this topic? Because this SECC 2011, that is socio-economic caste census survey, it is an effort to address various concerns regarding BPL census and to reduce inclusion or exclusion errors, right, and also to reduce poverty. So there are some schemes, so those schemes should be targeted and those schemes should reach the beneficiaries. So for all those things we need a good data, so good census. So socio-economic caste census, it helps, so it helps to address the various concerns regarding the BPL census, to reduce inclusion or exclusion errors, right. So that's the reason this SEC 2011 is important. So what are the important facts here? So you have to know about Saxena Expert Committee and Sumit Bose Committee. So you have to know this particular Saxena, that is Dr. N.C. Saxena Committee. So it was set up or it was constituted so that it can propose a new methodology for identifying BPL household. So it was set up to identify BPL household. So some new methodology. So why is this Sumit Bose Committee? It is important. So Sumit Bose Committee, they were the one who recommended we have to use SECC data in order to find or in order to identify the beneficiaries for all the central or centrally sponsored or central and state government schemes. Okay. So Saxena Committee, it was constituted in order to provide the new method to identify BPL. So next you have to note, based on this Saxena committee recommendation in 2011, Ministry of Rural Development, so it launched the socio-economic and caste census. So next, what is the SECC objective? It was not to replace the poverty line, rather it is just to identify who are the BPL beneficiaries. So the major objective of this SECC was not to replace the poverty line, but to provide information regarding the socio-economic condition and education status of various castes and sections, and they have to identify households that live below the poverty line. So next you have to know SECC 2011 census. It started in 2011 and it was completed in March 2016, and it used the census 2011 data as its base data. So this is the fact you have to know. And SECC, that is Socio-Economic Caste Census 2011, it is also the first paperless census in India conducted on handheld electronic devices. And unlike BPL census, this SECC, it allows for the first time to track the deprivation of households and address gaps effectively with focus on multi-dimensionality of poverty. So this is important. So this SECC, it is taking into consideration multiple dimensions or multi-dimensionality of poverty. So these are the facts. And next important facts is SECC 2011, it ranks households in 3 different categories, that is automatically excluded, automatically included and others. So those people or those households who are rich or who comes above the poverty line and high income class, so they are automatically excluded from the welfare benefits. And there are some section of people or category of people who come under the automatically included. So these are poor people. So it is based on 5 destitution parameters. And there are others. So these people, maybe sometimes they might be above poverty line, and sometimes because of seasonal variations and because of some other reasons they can fall into poverty. So such kind of other category people, they are also eligible for welfare benefits. So this is how the SEC 2011 census or the data, it tries to rank households in 3 different categories. Next, you should also know SEC 2011, it had 3 census components. One is census in rural area, second census in urban area, and third is caste census. So first one, census in rural area, it is done by Department of Rural Development, and second, census in urban area, it is taken care by Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, and caste census by Ministry of Home Affairs, that is Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India, who work under Ministry of Home Affairs. So these are the things which we have to know. So next topic, Global Gender Gap Report. Again, this report was recently released in 2021. So this Global Gender Gap Report, it is released by World Economic Forum. So first important fact what you have to remember is Global Gender Gap Report. So it is released by World Economic Forum. So why we are reading this topic? Because it provides the gender gap, so inequality. Okay, so as you can see in the figure, there is less gender gap in Iceland, Finland, Norway, New Zealand, Sweden, right? So these are some of the 5 important top countries where gender gap is, so where gender gap is less. So according to the recent gender gap report, India has fallen 28 places and now one of the worst performers in South Asia. That's why this particular report is important. So India is currently ranking 140 among 156 countries. So India is one of the worst performers, and we are trailing behind our neighbors such as Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka and Myanmar. So they are doing better and they are ranking better than India. So India's ranking right now is 140 among 156 countries. And also this Global Gender Gap Report, it identifies that South Asia is one of the worst performing regions, so when it comes to gender gap. So India's current ranking is 140 among 156, and we are one of the worst performers in South Asia. So next important report, that is Global Wage Report 2020-2021. So again this report is important because it is talking about wages and minimum wages in the time of COVID-19. Okay, so wages and minimum wages in the time of COVID-19, it was recently released and it is released by ILO. So Global Wage Report, it is released by ILO, that is International Labour Organization. And you have to know this 2021 edition, it analyzes the relationship of minimum wages and inequality. That's why this particular report is important both for prelims as well as mains. So this particular report, it helps to analyze the relationship of minimum wage and inequality. And this report, it also comments and it also highlights on the issues faced by Indian workers. So one is low average wages, and also we work for longer hours. And this report, it has also taken into account the national floor level minimum wage, which is around rupees 176 per day. However, actual wages, they are far higher compared to this particular data. And next, you have to know, the report shows that not all workers have been equally affected by the recent pandemic crisis. So this global wage report said there is inequality even when it comes to who lost the job or how the different workers got affected. So usually the low skilled occupations, they lost the job or the working hours compared to the higher paying managerial and professional jobs. So this is what the global wage report has highlighted. And today's last topic, that is state of food security and nutrition in world report. So SOFI. So first important fact what we have to know is this SOFI report, that is state of food security and nutrition in world. So it is jointly prepared by FAO, that is Food and Agriculture Organization, and then IFAD, that is International Fund for Agriculture Development, and UNICEF, World Food Program, and World Health Organization. So these are some of the important organizations. So they all jointly prepare this SOFI report. So again, this SOFI report, it is a annual report. So this report comes every year and it tries to inform on progress towards ending hunger, achieving food security, and improving nutrition. So it provides depth analysis on the key SDG goals, that is Sustainable Development Goals, which we saw just now. So next you have to know, since 2017, this SOFI presents two key measures of food insecurity. So there are two types of food insecurity. First one is prevalence of undernourishment, and second one is prevalence of moderate and severe food insecurity. So these are the two different types. So first one, that is prevalence of undernourishment. So it is focused on estimating the proportion of population who are facing, so these are the people who are facing some chronic deficiency of calories. So who are this second category? So they fall under those people who lack access to adequate and nutritious food. So they fall, so there is lack of access to adequate and nutritious food. So these are the two important category, or these are the two important measures of food insecurity which the SOFI report highlights. So finally you have to revise what are the key findings according to this SOFI report. So first important finding is the SOFI report is telling that between 8.3 crore and 13 crore people, they can go hungry this year because of pandemic or COVID situation. And this SOFI report is telling hunger continues to be on the rise since 2014. So the report is highlighting, when we take the global prevalence of undernourishment, so it is always rising and it is right now around 8.9%. So according to this SOFI report, Asia remains home to greatest number of undernourished, that is 38 crores, followed by Africa, that is 25, and then Latin America and Caribbean by 4.8 crores. So Asia is again performing poor when it comes to malnutrition or undernourished. So in 2019, in Asia alone, 21.3% of the children under 5 years, they were stunted, and around 6.9% were wasted, and around 5.6% were overweight. And SOFI report is highlighting that healthy diet, it costs more than 1.90 per day. That is the international poverty threshold. So we know that World Bank, it has set 1.90 US dollar as the threshold international poverty line. So the SOFI report is telling, so in order to have a good healthy diet, so it will cost more than 1.90 per day. And the SOFI report also highlights that the number of people globally who can't afford a healthy diet is more than 300 crore people, or more than the combined population of China and India. So this is what the SOFI report is highlighting. So these are the important content for today's topic. Do revise all these things. I know some of the topics, it had lot of facts and lot of findings to remember. Okay, so do revise. So we will meet in next session. Thank you.